If you ever sit down to work, open up your laptop, and then 20 minutes later, you're already checking your phone, opening up other tabs on the computer, wandering back into the kitchen for another coffee, or maybe you decided that this is the perfect time to clean the house. Well, you're not alone. A lot of people assume that this means that they lack discipline, but most of the time, this isn't the actual problem. A lot of smart, ambitious people assume that if they can't focus for long periods of time, there must be something wrong with them. They think that they're distracted or lazy or just simply not disciplined enough. But most of the time, the real issue isn't discipline at all. Your brain simply doesn't have the energy and support it needs to sustain focus. Your brain isn't broken, you're not lazy, and honestly, please don't think of this as a personality flaw. Now, in over 20 years of coaching, I've seen the same pattern just happen again and again. Smart, capable people who really care deeply about what they're doing, but they just can't seem to get their brain to cooperate. So they just push harder, right? They stay later in the office, they work on weekends, maybe rely a little bit too much on caffeine. They try all the productivity systems and apps and hacks and supplements and all of that kind of stuff. But honestly, that's rarely the solution. More often than not, what's missing is the right physical support for how the brain actually works. Now, if you want a healthy, high-performing body, you already know that the answer involves exercise, nutrition, and proper recovery. Your brain is no different, and that's exactly why I created this channel, to help you build the physical foundations that allow your brain to perform at the level that your ambition demands. In the previous video, we talked about the 3 p.m. slump, how after hours of thinking and decisions and screen time and meetings and all that kind of stuff, the brain simply starts to run low on readily available energy. That's why focus often fades in the afternoon. But then this raises another question. Why can some people hold deep concentration for long periods of time while others feel their focus slipping after like 20 minutes? In most cases, the difference isn't motivation. It's physiological capacity. The part of the brain responsible for most of your focus thinking is the prefrontal cortex. This is a system that handles things like planning, decision making, attention, problem solving. In other words, it handles all the kind of stuff that you need when you're trying to concentrate on deep or meaningful work. But this system is also extremely sensitive to energy. And for it to keep on working well, it needs a steady supply of oxygen, glucose, and a fairly stable internal environment. Now, when those resources start to drop, the brain protects itself by reducing activity in this kind of specific area, which is why sustained concentration can feel surprisingly tough sometimes. And it's not because you're lazy, but because your brain is trying to manage energy. You know, your brain is actually trying to look after you. So once you understand that focus depends on energy, another interesting question probably pops up, right? Now, if focus requires energy, where does that energy come from? And more importantly, can we improve our brain's ability to produce it? Now, this is where exercise becomes really, really important. When you exercise regularly, especially through aerobic training and strength training, your body begins to adapt in ways that directly improve energy production. Now, one of the most important adaptations happens inside the cells. Exercise increases the number and the efficiency of structures called mitochondria. Now, these are essentially kind of small energy generators inside your cells, and they convert nutrients and oxygen into usable energy. The more efficient this system becomes, the more energy your body and your brain can produce, which means your brain has greater capacity to support demanding cognitive work. Exercise also improves blood flow, increases oxygen delivery to the brain, and triggers a number of kind of biological changes that also help support the brain. So, you know, when people say exercise is good for the brain, it isn't just kind of vague wellness chat. You know, there are very real physiological changes taking place that make your brain more capable of sustained focus and thinking. So you might now be thinking, well, what kind of training actually helps? Like what should you be doing? Well, the good news is the same types of exercise that improve your physical health also tend to support brain performance. So you don't need to do anything kind of weird or different. I've already mentioned aerobic training, so things like brisk walking, running, cycling, swimming, that kind of stuff improves cardiovascular efficiency and supports the energy systems that your brain really kind of relies on. Strength training is fantastic. It improves metabolic health and insulin sensitivity, which that helps kind of stabilize blood glucose levels, and stable blood glucose it's incredibly important for maintaining consistent mental energy throughout your day. And then there's HIIT, or high intensity interval training. And when you use this appropriately, it can simulate additional adaptations in both the body and the brain. Really cool research showing some cool effects with that. Look, you don't need to train like an athlete, but having a combination of aerobic fitness, strength training, and some higher intensity work, and then it's worth chucking in some mobility and stability just to look after yourself. That can make a huge difference to your brain's ability to sustain demanding thinking. What's really interesting though is that the benefits don't stop with focus. Research is consistently showing that regular exercise can improve things like memory, learning capacity, confidence, mood. All of these things contribute to better overall cognitive performance. And these are all ideas that we'll explore in more detail in future videos. So if you've been struggling to concentrate or sustain focus, don't immediately assume that the problem is discipline. Very often, the real issue is that the systems supporting your brain simply aren't being trained properly, or maybe at all. Now, your brain relies on your body for energy, oxygen, and metabolic stability. And when those systems improve, your ability to think, to focus, and perform, they'll usually improve as well. For many people, the usual reasons for exercising are things like getting fitter, stronger, losing weight, or improving long-term health. And those things are obviously incredibly valuable, but they don't always float everyone's boat. They don't always motivate everyone. But what often gets people's attention is a different idea: the possibility that looking after your body might be one of the most powerful ways to support your brain, to think more clearly, to sustain focus for longer, and to perform at the level that your ambition demands. In other words, exercise isn't just something that changes your body, it can also change how your brain works. And the lovely consequence of training for your brain is that your body ends up getting all the usual health benefits as well. So if you've drifted away from training recently, then this might be a good moment just to get things going again, start again. And if you'd like help with structuring exercise, nutrition, and recovery in a way that supports your brain and, obviously your body, I've created a community where we explore all of this in a bit more detail, and you'll find a link below. Otherwise, I hope this video finds you well and maybe helps you see focus and exercise in a slightly different way.